So they have to add all that on. In fact, they outsource it to Ingram. So I was like, I can't have the paperback be more expensive.
Yeah.
So I did both with Ingram, and it just made more sense. So that's how I ended up with these two.
Oh, that's fascinating. That's really.
Jane, I had the same question for you. Why did you choose to use this course rather than to go to the
Why did
traditional
it
course?
create space? Because you know, it's just something simple, but you know.
So for you, self-publishing your book was basically the option you chose because you didn't anticipate being on the New York Times bestseller list. You had your own pictures and layout and story, and you knew it was going to be a very small niche market originally.
Right.
Although you had total strangers buy your book too, simply because they were fascinated with the time period, with the what they were wearing, the artistry of the book itself. So you go through Create Space, you said.
Yeah, I went through Create Space, and I was really looking for just a way of getting it out to the extended family.
Exactly.
And
yet here you are, flying your wares to total strangers. Good for you. Linda, same question. Why did you choose independent publishing rather than traditional?
I'm not getting any younger. I don't know. It does take a while longer, and a lot of rejections and whatever. And I think it's harder to sell a book when you have the illustrations as well as the
Because you're the graphic artist, you weren't ready to hand your story off to somebody who's going to do the artwork.
Right. So I think so just doing it together.
Yeah, that made total sense.
Okay, so my book didn't fit the mold. So originally when I first started writing, I was going in with a kind of a self-help sort of focus, but I made up this genre because it doesn't exist, but it's my genre. I call it a micro memoir.
Nice.
Powerful.
It's a personal growth micro memoir. So I was thinking, I originally wrote it in a very memoir kind of format. But I did want it to have self-help, and I didn't want it to be something that folks that were reading it could take something from it and apply to their own lives. And the sequence is odd. I talk about losses chronologically coming from now to back in time to present time. It's just a weird, different kind of layout. So I shared it with a few New York Times bestsellers, actually. And their feedback was exactly that. They loved it, but they said, it doesn't fit the mold. It doesn't fit into the categories, the clean little categories that exist. So that was my reason.
My turn now. Of course, self-publishing for me, knowing and having in the past with my science fiction series sent query letters and partial chapters and all the sample chapters out to various publishing houses that did specialize in science fiction. This was back in the early 90s, and you get the form letters back or nothing at that point. And everything was snail mail. You weren't sending them electronically through email to the publishing companies, to an editor that you could identify beforehand. So it sat, and I just kept writing. So when it came time to getting back into writing after other detours that life takes you on, I got involved with a writers group here before this one, and the facilitator of that group was self-published, and she says this is a burgeoning new industry. You write your book, you have access to editing services if you want to pay for them, but you say it's autonomous, it's in, it's out, you can have your books on the shelf within a couple of months, and me knowing that it can take anywhere from 2 to 5 years before you can actually see a book, and all you're doing is handing the manuscript and your prayers over to the publishing companies that they're going to do it right, that they're going to sell it well, and so the promotional didn't really entice me, but it was the point of saying I would have something in my hand that I could share, and that the stories would be shared. And so with that, I sent off Earthchild, which is the first book that I ever published, self-published through Create Space. And it just started the ball rolling, and then the next book was Rabbit's Tail, and I've moved on from there. And then, of course, brushed off the old sci-fi books and brought them up to date and have started publishing them as well. So that's my story with self-publishing as far as why I chose that. And like Linda, I'm thinking, I might not be here in 5 years. I've got 10 books in the science fiction series. It'll be posthumously published, and my niece Laura will be getting all the royalties. So I wanted it done now, impatient as I was. So, okay, that's
the manuscript, and my experience with them was actually amazing. The most amazing part was when you watch your book come alive with the illustrations.
yes.
Again, I couldn't do it myself. I had to have somebody help me, and I worked side by side, or whatever you want to say, very closely with the illustrator, so I could actually describe the pictures, give her ideas. She would give me different illustrations. I would tell her whether she was on target with me or off target, and we just kept working together until we got it done. So, great experience, but I couldn't have done it by myself.
The next question, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you
No,
short.
that's fine.
Is that
I'm
it?
good.
Okay.
Yeah,
I have to keep track.
I know.
Next question is, what are the pros and cons to independent publishing versus self-publishing, especially when it comes to hiring professional services and the costs involved? Okay, and we're going to start with Jane.
Well,
Pros and cons of the.
I can do
independent-
better federation than anybody, so.
There you go.
What can I say? So I was all set with that, so.
Mhm. Ready to go, and that was your
Yeah.
focus.
Yeah.
Okay, makes total sense to me. Linda?
Can you repeat the question?
Sure. The pros and cons of independent publishing versus doing the professional, handing it over. The publishing business, professional, traditional publishing versus self-publishing. That there are differences in how the business is run, and if you're aware of what worked for you for self-publishing and what hurdles you might have encountered with the traditional publishing.
The pro is you have control over everything.
Yes.
Cons are you don't get the marketing that, the book publisher
Yeah.
provide. And I've been
Nationwide.
on both ends of it. I have done illustration for books before, and
Okay.
people are picky. but I just, it worked for me.
Mm-hmm. And the other thing with traditional publishing is the pro is that they're going to get your book into every Barnes and Noble and every little bookstore that wants to order it through, what are the distributing ones? I can't Ingram and,
Spring Arbor.
yeah,
There's
there's
another
another one.
Baker.
Baker Taylor, yeah,
Baker Taylor.
exactly. So, so now with self-publishing, that aspect is totally in your lap, so. E, how about you, pros and cons of the way you did it versus the
Yes.
other option?
So, I would agree that you do get the control. For me, like, this is my life I'm spilling out there.
Sure.
This was revealing way too much. Way TMI. And for me, I wanted to be sure that the presentation was something that I felt comfortable with, because I was so vulnerable in writing it and putting it out there that I said, I wanted to look a certain way, like the cover design. It was a photographer that was a friend of mine that I knew could capture the kind of image that I wanted. The graphic designer also was a friend of mine that we worked for years together. So he knew as well, and I knew that he could bring to life what I wanted to illustrate. So the positives were that I did have that type of influence to reveal the underbelly of my life, so to the public to see. But yes, I do agree that on the distribution side, it's a bit of a challenge. But I knew that going in, and I'll say this: it really does depend too what your ultimate goal is.
Right, that is true.
My ultimate goal, if I help one person navigate loss or look at things differently and help them, I've succeeded. I'm good. So I wasn't going into this, I want to be a New York Times bestseller.
Right.
So my motivations and my goals were aligned with the path that I took with regards to how self-publishing.